Nembe Kingdom sits on the creeks of the Niger Delta, where water runs through the veins of the land, and canoes are older than some roads. For over 400 years, when disputes rose too high for village elders to settle, one name silenced arguments from brass to bony: Ibidikiri. Not a man, not a place. Ibidikiri was the court. The court that spoke without talking. Ibidikiri wasn't built of stone. It had no roof, no walls, no gavel. It was a sacred grove at the edge of Nembe town, ringed by ancient iroko and mangrove trees, whose roots drank both fresh and salt water. At its center stood three things. 1. The Agadigbo log, a fallen tree trunk polished by centuries of sitting. Only the judges, called Ama Owuo, could sit here. 2. The Silence Pool, a shallow pond. If you lied before Ibidikiri, they said the pool would ripple without wind. 3. The Masquerade of Truth, Owuwu, a masquerade that never spoke, it only pointed. In West Africa, most courts relied on words, witnesses, and oaths. Ibidikiri relied on something older: shame, spirit, and the fear of breaking community. A case would begin at dawn. The complainant and defendant walked in barefoot. No lawyers, no written laws. The Ama Owuo, usually 7 elders who had never been found guilty of theft or adultery, listened for 3 things: the story, the contradictions, and the silence between words. How Ibidikiri settled war over a canoe. Around 1742, 2 fishing families in Tuan Brass nearly went to war over a canoe. Family A said Family B stole it at night. Family B said they found it adrift after a storm. The case had dragged for 8 months. 3 men had already been wounded in night fights. They brought it to Ibidikiri. The Ama Owuo didn't ask who stole it. They asked what will restore the creek. Both families were ordered to rebuild the canoe together, paddling it for 7 days up and down the Nun River. They ate from the same pot. On the 7th day, Family B broke down and confessed. They had taken the canoe after a dispute over nets, but because they had worked, eaten, and slept with their rivals, the confession didn't end in blood. Ibidikiri's ruling: Family B would give Family A 2 new fishing nets and 20 pots of palm oil. Both families would sponsor the next Egbesu festival together. No one was jailed, no one was exiled, but both families were now bound by shared labor and shared debt. In Nembe law, that was stronger than chains. Why it was called the highest court. Ibidikiri didn't hear every case. Village heads handled theft, land boundaries, and marriage disputes. Ibidikiri only took cases that threatened the kingdom's peace. Accusations of witchcraft that could cause mob killings, chieftaincy disputes that could split clans, murder cases where evidence was circumstantial, cases between Nembe and other kingdoms like Bani and Kalabari, cases between Nembe and other kingdoms like Bani, Kalabari, and Brass. Its rulings were final. Even the Amananawe, the king, could not overturn Ibidikiri. The belief was simple: the court didn't belong to the king. It belonged to the ancestors and the water spirits of Nembe. British colonial officers in the 1890s called it primitive and tried to replace it with native courts. It didn't work. When a British magistrate ruled against a Nembe chief in 1901, the chief appealed to Ibidikiri. The masquerade Owuwu pointed at the British ruling and tore it. The case was retried. The community obeyed Ibidikiri, not the colonial court. The rules you couldn't break. 1. No lying under the iroko. Perjury wasn't punished by flogging. It was punished by banishment. To be banned from Nembe creeks meant death by hunger and isolation. 2. No blood on sacred ground. If you drew blood during a hearing, you lost the case instantly, even if you were right. Silence is testimony. If you couldn't answer a question from the Ama Owuo, your silence was taken as guilt. But if you answered too quickly, they assumed you rehearsed a lie. Restitution over punishment. Ibidikiri rarely executed people. It forced the guilty to restore what was broken, often doubling the loss. If you burned a house, you built 2. This made Ibidikiri slow. A single case could take 3 weeks, but it also made it stick. People obeyed because the ruling repaired relationships, not just punished crimes. The decline and memory. Missionaries and colonial administration eroded Ibidikiri's power by the 1930s. Written law, police stations, and prisons offered faster, if harsher, justice. The last major case heard at Ibidikiri was in 1948, a land dispute between Nembe and Okpoama that threatened to cut off the fishing routes. Today, the grove is still there. The Iroko log is cracked, the silence pool is half filled with mud, and Awuwu only comes out during the Nembe Cultural Festival. But older Nembe people will still say, if you want true judgment, take it to Ibidikiri. Not because the court still sits, but because the idea stuck. In a region where oil, politics, and money have torn communities apart, Ibidikiri represents a time when justice meant restoring the creek, not winning the fight.